I was sitting around with a pad of paper one day, and I came up with a little doodle that I thought might make the outside of the tool shed a little more interesting. We had just completed the plaster on this wall about 2 or 3 hours prior to this, and it was starting to firm up nicely, so I thought this might be a good chance to transfer the design from my doodle onto the wall. Using a couple nails and a string, I transferred the circular shape onto the wall, and then just using a 16-penny nail, started sketching the design in. I knew in my head what I wanted it to look like, so it was just a matter of getting it to proportionally fit the wall. Now that the teeth from the saw blade had been sketched in, it was time to find the appropriate spot for the axe. I remember having an art teacher who used to draw on large canvases with a piece of charcoal attached to a long stick so we could get further away from the wall, and now I understand why he did that. In order to get the angle right for the axe handle, I needed to have Yvonne come in, stand further back, and kind of guide me to let me know that my ruler was in the right perspective. Now that the outline is complete, it was just a question of taking a couple nails and scratching up the surface so that when we come back tomorrow to create this design, it'll have good adhesion to the wall. We're now ready to begin to create the design on the wall. We made a cob mix using our standard recipe, and this time we did not add any concrete colorant. This would create a light gray effect once it's dried. We were also careful to use very finely chopped straw and very finely sifted native soil. We wanted to make sure that this was going to have a smooth appearance once it's completed. In order to aid us in the 3D effect, we also created our mix quite a bit thicker than normal. It really had the texture of a modeling clay. As you can see, Yvonne is able to create the teeth of the saw blade without any problem. I moved over to start creating the axe head. Yvonne really has the uncanny ability to focus down onto small details. And here you can see her working on the sawtooth using a very fine plastic trowel. So the sun is starting to come around in the sky and it's illuminating our wall. It also started illuminating our clay mix on the ground, so we brought the wheelbarrow in to provide a little shade. Because of the additional Portland cement in the mix, it did dry up a bit faster than our standard cob recipe. That really doesn't cause too much of a problem because you can continually rehydrate that mix. In addition to a variety of sizes of trowels, we also have small artist's palette knives, and here you can see Yvonne working on the side of the saw blade using a small palette knife. I'm over there working on the edge of the axe, and for some reason I had it in my head, I want to make this thing look sharp. In order to assure good adhesion, you got to keep the substrate damp. So you'll see us hitting the wall with the hose every once in a while. This also helps smooth out the cob mix too. So I'm going to get started on the axe handle right now, and Yvonne is finishing up the interior portion of the saw blade. Once she gets that smoothed out, I think she's going to grab some of the mix and head inside to start working on one of the interior walls. Now I'm going along the edge with a palette knife, making sure that the design is smooth to the wall. And once that's complete, I grab a small paintbrush and some water, and I'm going along that edge and I'm wetting it down. And what that's doing is creating a good seal with no gaps between the design and the wall itself. So at this point, the design is actually complete. And we decided we were going to leave the trowel texture on the design itself. Not going back to sponge it, but we're going to leave the tool markings on it to give it just a different texture as opposed to the wall. And we're looking at it, going over the edges, just double checking that everything has good adhesion and all the gaps have been closed properly. Later that evening, I did go back with a sponge and I hit this design just to soften down those tool marks a bit. They're especially noticeable now with the light coming in so hard from the side. So at this point we're standing back and admiring our work, and then we noticed that the arbor hole for the circular saw blade was missing. Luckily we had some mix left over, and Yvonne made quick work of creating that design element. So it's been a few days and the wall is thoroughly dry, and it's time to put on the final waterproofing sealant. Now this product I purchased at Home Depot, and we used it on our solar shed and it worked real well. It's water-based and it is breathable. So we spray on with a garden sprayer 2 coats, and it provides excellent protection. According to the directions, you should spray it on with a garden sprayer and then back roll with a roller just to ensure good coverage. This product does not change the color of the wall at all. It only becomes darker while it's wet, but once it's dry, it'll be as it was before. It does provide a slight sheen to the wall, which also prevents dusting and gives the wall a little bit more of a smoother appearance. The product, like I said, I bought at Home Depot, and I believe it was about $15. That bottle that you saw was enough to do the entire tool shed, all the walls, 2 coats.